I looked at the comments from some of our last videos here, and it seemed like the SCADA discussion really kind of hit a vein and got a lot of people talking. So, what'd you find out of that? What were people saying from there?
Two things that I learned, besides us being wrong, was that on the midstream side, the thing that I guess caught my attention the most is that these companies have agreements with the federal government, so that if SCADA fails and they cannot remotely access the pipeline controls, their field operators have to be able to run these pipelines from the field, right? So there has to be a fail safe, there has to be redundancy built in. And so if you start out in the pipeline industry, right, that's probably what you're going to start out learning is, how to manage these manually. On the production side, there was an example of like an ESP failing and, running a well dry, and how that could really turn into a $40,000 problem. And that could be controlled through SCADA. So if you had a malicious actor get in there and control something, they could cause a lot of financial damage. And if you had 2 or 3 thousand barrels of oil that overflowed tanks for 12 hours, and this has happened in the past, and goes into a nearby creek, your remediation could take months in addition to all the lawsuits. So midstream operators have the ability to control their SCADA systems through satellites instead of internet. And what that does is obviously it's harder to connect and interfere with the satellite connections. Your typical hacker is going to be an environmental group that's trying to prove a point, or, a pissed off employee that still has their credentials. So what is running coil and why do they do it?
Coil is essentially just a big reel of drill pipe that you can roll into location, and it comes out on a huge on the back of a truck. One of the benefits to coil is that it doesn't have any connection, so you don't really have any connection time. You can run in the hole at 150 foot a minute. You can pull out the same, and you're able to get it in and out of the hole really quickly. The downside to coil is that you can't rotate it. So, if you want to turn something whenever you're out there, like drilling out plugs, you've got to put a motor on the end of it and a bit, which works just great. Another limitation to coil is it's the length of it. They're starting to make like longer and longer and longer reels of coils, so that you can, drill your wells out and go ahead and reach all the way down to bottom. But, it's still limited. A lot of these people you're seeing, they're drilling 4 mile laterals. And so you're getting out there 28, 30,000 foot of well bore. And so being able to drill that out with coil is a big challenge. And so a lot of times you'll have to go back to stick pipe. But going back to one of our earlier discussions too, one of the guys when we were talking about dissolvable frac plugs, he was essentially saying that, they'd put, I think they would put regular frac plugs down to where they could reach, like with your coil unit, and then they put dissolvables out there beyond it, thinking that those will dissolve, and you don't have to drill out the entire wellbore to try to have a clean flow path. That's essentially that's coil. There's a lot to talk about in a very short amount of time, but really there's just no connections associated with that coil reel.
My stupid question of the week is drill pipe is not flexible. It seems fairly rigid. So vertical makes sense. Like I can understand a vertical drill all day long, but how do you go from vertical to horizontal?
Well, I mean, drill pipe is flexible, right? Because it can't go from vertical to horizontal without some form of bending in it. Now,
Okay.
depending on what size of drill pipe you've got, will also or weight, a lot of that stuff will determine exactly how flexible it is. But you can get with 4-inch drill pipe, you can get up to 30 or 35 degrees, and it'll still make that turn right there. As the drill pipe gets bigger in OD or heavier, a thicker wall, then you'll lose some of that flexibility. But, at the end of the day, drill pipe is flexible, or else you wouldn't be able to turn it, push it horizontally.
Okay. And it's steel. I'm guessing
Yeah.
it's steel or iron, right? It's got to be
Yeah.
one or the other.
Yep. It
Okay.
is. Yep.
All
And
right.
there's all different kinds. You can get S grade or G grade or all these different things. But yes, it's steel. Yep.
Hot oil treatments. I've heard about this a couple times, talked to a few people that have done it, and just curious what it is and why it's done.
So as far as hot oil treatments go, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory in what they're doing, right? They're bringing out hot oil, pump it down your well bore, and then when it pumps down there, really what it's doing is it's one, bringing heat, and two, It can also, the mechanical action of the fluid going past and all that stuff can kind of move things around. But really what you're trying to do is dissolve stuff or clear out your perfs. If you think you've got a lot of paraffin or stuff like that downhole, hot oil treatment a lot of times will break it up and help clear it out so that you can flow it back out and get back on your decline curve.
Okay. And as far as heat goes, I mean, is it like 180 degrees? Is there a certain temperature that they're running it at, or does that vary depending on, the job being done?
I think it would vary quite a bit. I haven't run tons of hot oil treatments,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
I know it's got to be up there pretty high to dissolve a lot of that paraffin, but because downhole's already pretty warm, when you're
Okay.
getting down multiple thousands of feet below surface, your temperature's growing up there. Like when we drill a horizontal well, a lot of ours are 200 to 300 degrees, and that's not even hot for the U.S. You start getting to Haynesville, and it's much higher down there.
Does artificial lift fall onto the production side, or is that on the drilling side?
Artificial lift falls on the production side of things. So that's after the well's been drilled and completed. Now you're starting to flow back. A lot of times wells flow back on their own. So, they're kind of cleaning themselves up and they'll, produce oil, gas, water without any intervention. But at some point you start losing reservoir drive. And so you're no longer getting your fluids out of the hole as efficiently as you were before, and the well starts to load up. And so at that point, you install artificial lift. There's all different kinds. You do an analysis, depends on how much fluid you're making, on which kind you can put in there. The economics will also help you make the right decision there. But really what artificial lift is it's trying to lower your bottom hole pressure by getting some of that hydrostatic out of there from those fluids accumulating so that hydrocarbons will continue to flow into your well.
Okay. One of the very first podcasts I ever listened to, 5 years ago was an artificial lift, company that was talking about what they do. And for some reason, it's just been like, it's just the thing. I just always been interested in learning more about it. So if there's an
There's
artificial lift company out there, I'd love to talk with you. I think it'd be awesome.
there's a lot of them. I mean, you've got all different kinds of mechanisms.
Yeah, there's a lot of, I wouldn't have thought that there was so many different types of artificial lift until you start to dig into it, right? But you're really extending the life of the well, I think it's pretty incredible
100%.
what that technology can allow. So,
Yep. Yep. You got to figure out what's fit for purpose there, what's going to make economic sense.
right. Always goes back to the economic sense. Always.
Eh,
It seems to be a trend.
If you want to run away from bankruptcy, it'd be better.
Yeah, good point. BOP certs. We had a meeting a couple days ago, and you mentioned BOP certs were one of like the high level questions that you might ask a company that you're talking to. And a lot of it stemmed from, just really certifications. And there's so many in the oil field, but specifically on the BOP, obviously we're asking that question so it can be, if something happens, it's all hands on deck. We all know how to fix the problem. But how hard are those certifications to get? Is it, tell me a little bit more about that, I guess.
So essentially with your like BOP or your well control certifications, like you go to a class, I think they're starting to do some of them online. I've only done mine in person, but you go to a class, you're usually there for 4 or 5 days, 7 to 9 hours a day. And a lot of it is lecture and discussion. And essentially what they're doing is going through different scenarios, teaching you, well, one, making sure everybody's got the same terminology, two, going through different scenarios and things like identifying when the well's at risk, like what does a decrease in pump pressure mean with an increase in flow, like being able to identify that something's going on. But then beyond that, really and probably the most important thing it does is it teaches you how to deal with that, right? So not just identifying it, but how to shut it in, how to control it, all the different calculations that you need to do to be able to circulate the gas out safely and then be able to resume drilling. And so, most of those are 4 or 5 day classes, and quite a bit of kind of math formulas involved in that. There's also, you kind of get on a little simulator, like you're sitting in front of a computer, and it's got a little handle next to you, and you're opening and closing the choke as you circulate out the gas. So it's identification, intervention, and then just making sure that you could do it physically as well.
Yeah, one of the companies that we work with, they provide training, and that was kind of a cool avenue to go down. But I mean, to kind of hear it from the drilling engineer side and why those are important, obviously, in picking, who you work with, right?
Well, yeah,
It's kind
certainly.
of interesting. And I think it's an annual thing that they look at and do. I know the IADC is a huge proponent of the safety training and making sure that those certs are up to date as well. So,
They're definitely involved in that.
oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. Cool.